Bill, can you hear anything? 1, 2. 1, 2. I still can't hear you through the speakers. 1, 2.
You just have to appear in person.
Let's see. Something. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. What about now, Bill?
What about now, Bill?
You should have me now. All right, Bill.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yep, you're great. That was my fault. I didn't have the source, on the projector screen. Switched over.
Okay, so we're good now then, right?
Yeah, you have good audio. You can mute if you'd like.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good.
It sounds good, but there may be an excess, the excess may have to go
No,
to
it floats
them.
downward, right?
Yes, that's from that, back to the.
I like to
We
give
have
half
a
as
$500,000
much
fine.
grief as possible.
No, if the fine's there, we can enforce the whole fine and have the whole $500,000. So that's not a problem.
Because the first thing I do
Chamber-
when this happens, I'm.
Chamber
gonna
guy's not on yet.
Who?
Richard, is it Richard?
Yes,
Goldman?
yes, yes.
Supposed to be adjoining, but I
So,
haven't
yeah,
seen
so
him.
if that's the case, then we can own it, and then we can,
Does he
we
know it's
bid it out, we
5:30
sell it.
and
I mean,
not
trust me, we don't want it.
We can,
No, God, no, we don't wanna hold the house.
And if somebody else can buy
we
it,
can wait a couple of minutes.
Okay.
I'll give them 30 days to.
Do we have all three commissioners?
Yes, and Bill Tredick.
Okay.
Let me see if I can reach him. We have no police.
Protest today?
Feel for you.
Carswell. Commissioners, you don't have to respond, but I gotta leave for a Zoom meeting at like 5 till 6 across the street, and then the famous Lieutenant Carswell will be filling in for me.
I got preferential treatment today, which is my fame.
Parking spot?
Yeah, I went to the, I had a follow-up
Little
appointment.
storm's making
Yeah,
its way
before you
up
walked
there.
in, you had to fill out a
Come on
COVID
now.
form. And I was looking at it, and I was like, the question was,
We're ready to go? Okay. Okay, everyone. I'm going to call to order the continuation of the regular June 1st meeting that occurred last night. We are continuing tonight with just a few agenda items. And we'll conduct this meeting in person and by Zoom, which is allowed by the governor's executive order. And if we will rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance right now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Beverly, our roll call, please.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor England,
Here?
Vice Mayor Casca,
Here.
Commissioner George,
Here.
Commissioner Rumwell,
Here.
Commissioner Samora.
Here.
Thank you, Commissioners, for being agreeable to coming back for a few minutes to finish just a couple of items tonight. Give us a little time to go through staff comments and finish up our one last agenda item. Before we do that, we need to go back to an agenda item under new business. Item number 9, the solid waste collection regulations are amendments to Chapter 10. We need to ask our attorney to read the ordinance into the record.
All right. An ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida relating to garbage and trash, amending the code of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Chapter 10, Garbage and Trash, to amend, revise, and restate the entire Chapter 10 of the City Code and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, do we need to do anything else other than read that into the record?
No, everybody, we should record the vote again to confirm that they knew what they were voting on. That's why we read it into the record, is so
Okay.
that there's no question about what the commissioners are
Okay.
voting on.
So we did have a motion to approve and a second, and do we need a roll call vote again?
Yes, yes,
Okay, all right. Beverly, if you will repeat the roll call vote.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Samora,
Yes.
Commissioner George,
Yes.
Mayor England,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casca,
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, Mr. Taylor, have we completed that according to our rules?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item would be to discuss the request by the Chamber of Commerce to approve the pledge and allow use of the city seal. Is Mr. Goldman on the phone?
He's connected now.
He is connected. All right, Mr. Goldman, would you like to present this issue and explain a little bit and allow our commissioners to ask questions?
Certainly. As I was not able to hear what happened
moments ago. I'll start with really what I think I've heard today regarding your concerns about the pledge program. Do you feel as though you have had the concept of it, or would you like me to start there, Madam Mayor?
I think explaining the concept and, where this came from, other cities who've done it, that would be very helpful for our commissioners.
Okay, super. We, in the communication with and listening to what audiences are interested in this new post-COVID world, one of their greatest concerns is safety, the perceived safety of destinations. A number of us, with destinations, have looked for ways to demonstrate. I apologize, my phone is being noisy. We have found and looked for ways to demonstrate the safety of our destinations. And to demonstrate that, one of the ways to do that is to have a program we call the Pledge Program. Savannah came out very early, in very early May, with the Savannah Safe Pledge. And that's the idea that's operating as a template for what we're doing. The idea is that a business goes online, reads what is included in that pledge, agrees to it, and then receives the information, posters, flyers, in some cases window clings, that demonstrate that they have agreed to this pledge and will follow the guidelines for safe operation. Those guidelines, by the way, are basic CDC guidelines, many of which our properties already are aware of. They've received the information on what safe opening it looks like. The county operates a website, we do, that shares what those are, and the various trade organizations that support restaurants and attractions and hotels all have that data available to them. So the pledge program simply allows a business to demonstrate to their guests and business customers that they ascribe to or have made the pledge and are therefore practicing those things that make their guests feel safer. You'll notice, and I presume that you did receive copies of it, that things that are the most concerning to our businesses have been expressed by others as well in the historic city and in the county, in Ponte Vedra, about, well, do we have to wear masks? Just like the governor's direction and the CDC's direction, masks are encouraged. Simple as that. The idea that we are hearing from our visitors that things like signals like signs that say, here's what we're doing to keep our property clean, here's the things that we're doing to keep you safe, and our employees happen to be wearing masks when they're interacting with you. Those are things that reinforce the visitor's desire to feel safe. And so that's something that, that's what the pledge is meant to do. It's meant to be a signal to visitors and between businesses that they're following methods that make the visitor feel safe. That's important to us because visitors have told us that it's important, and they will make decisions on where they go based on what they see. But it's also important, we're getting feedback that it's important because that's what visitors are saying. We're seeing it in social media. I spoke with my colleague at Visit Savannah today, and he says that their feedback has been very positive regarding it, that they're in fact looking at extending their program to locals and to guests and visitors. So we think it's important. It is encouraged. We know, as he shared with me, that policing and enforcement is difficult at best. And so there will be businesses that are better at it and businesses that are not very good at it. But ultimately, the market will choose. Those businesses will receive more visitors and higher spending visitors who, right now, the data suggests support such a program and make their visitors feel safe.
And has
Long way
St.
around the block.
Augustine, excuse me, and has St. Augustine and the county already approved the use of their seal?
They have.
And how do you plan to disseminate this to the businesses in St. Augustine Beach?
So we treat all the businesses in the tourism industry pretty much the same. The website is going to be maintained by the county. I will inform, providing links and a digest of the program. I'll inform all of our stakeholders of the program once it exists, once it is up and running. We don't. We try not to get out too far in front in case there are changes. So, from what I heard from Michael Ryan, we're looking for the support from the City of St. Augustine Beach, and then the decision will be made to move forward with the creative, incorporating the city's logo. And we should be off and running by the first of next week at the latest.
Okay. I'm going to, Vice Mayor Costa, I'm going to turn this over to you to ask your questions.
Are you sure? I have a lot.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you so much, Richard, for joining us, and I really appreciate you being here. I have to say that I am an advocate of helping to minimize the spread, to open up our economy, to be an advocate for local businesses to be successful. And you seem to balance so much so well, and I admire and respect that. So thank you for your input. It's definitely appreciated. So I have a couple of questions, just basic in the framework. Did I understand you correctly to say that the web page or link will be maintained by the county?
That's right. They will have the web page that incorporates the pledge. You would go on there as a business. You would, read it and then agree to it, and then become part of a database of businesses that are participating. And then you would receive your materials to allow you to promote that.
Okay. So one of my concerns, and I had begun to talk to you about this earlier, was the very last item on the pledge, which says encourage the use of face coverings by employees and customers. I personally don't have a problem with it. Right now, in my own business, as we began to reopen and I rehired my employees back, I had a one-on-one meeting with every employee. I have a written procedure that we follow for COVID, specific directions of operations in our store that they read. I asked them questions, and then they signed and agreed to it. And one of the things was, you may wear a face mask if you would like. None of my employees have chosen to wear a face mask. And so I'm concerned that, does that give the perception, if you have employees who are choosing not to wear face masks, does that give the perception that you're not following the pledge?
The language of the pledge is that it's encouraged. It's ultimately the market, will make decisions about where they're comfortable doing business. you know, there are businesses that may be a little more, that visitors, now I'm kind of getting out on a limb here, but it seems logical that there are certain businesses that their customers would be more concerned about things like face covering, and there are businesses where guests would be less concerned about them. But that's, you know, that's really, it's a program that you have to decide works for you. Again, the language is encouraged. The language that anyone would see is encouraged.
I would definitely agree with that. I think there are some industries, some businesses that it would make more sense and people would be more concerned than with others. I would definitely agree with that. So when it seems as though we could be approaching phase 2 in Florida relatively soon, maybe in a matter of weeks. Once we reach phase 2, of course, we don't know what phase 2, even the terminology or what that will look like. Will the pledge continue, or what do you see as the longevity of this program?
The thinking of the various of us who have been talking about this is that as long as people are concerned about it, it will be useful. Businesses will be the folks that are in the trenches and are hearing from their customers, so they'll know. As far as the nature of the governor's phase 2 and his step-by-step program, that is written, what his phase 2 looks like, and so I would be glad to share that with you, so that you can see what his plans are. Now, we have authority as local entities. You as a municipality have a great deal of authority over, you know, what a phase 2 looks like.
Correct. We can always, as a city,
I
make
can't say
more
for sure,
stringent requirements
that,
than the state.
That we pull the plug when we hit phase 2. I
Correct.
don't think that's the intention.
No, I don't think that it would be
As long as it's
either.
needed.
So just a little bit of background. I did a little bit of research today comparing the state of Georgia and the state of Florida and what's going on in each state. The state of Georgia, their last executive order was 26 pages long and included 39 numbered requirements for businesses to be able to be open. And one of them, number 7, does indeed require all employees of any business to wear face masks. So I can see easily how the pledge fits Georgia, and I can also understand the uniqueness of comparing Savannah with St. Augustine. Savannah is a tourism-driven coastal community. St. Augustine is a tourism-driven coastal community, so we do have a lot of similarities. The biggest difference, though, is indeed in the difference between our current executive order and Georgia's current executive order, which Georgia's current executive order places much more restrictions on businesses in order to be open than Florida. Just a little bit of background and information. And then the number of reported cases, and I know that this is often kind of a contentious issue, but the number of confirmed cases in Georgia as it relates to the total population of Georgia is about double of what the confirmed cases in the state of Florida are compared to the total population. As of yesterday, the numbers were, we had 55,415 confirmed cases. Florida has a population of approximately 21.5 million people, which equates to about a 2.6% rate. Georgia has a population of about 10.6 million, and has, as of yesterday, had 47,899 cases, which is a 4.5% rate. It's just numbers, but it does present a little bit of a different picture. I'm not sure that I have anything else really to add. I think that it gives, one of the things in moving forward with all of the planning is a consistent, unified approach. I think that this does that. However, I personally am a little concerned about, the face mask thing. And I will put it in perspective like this. I would challenge anyone to put on a face mask and go out and do about 15 or 20 minutes of yard work, and then think about an employee who's wearing a face mask for 4 to 6 hour shift, especially when we still have, in the restaurant industry at least, and I know that it's different when you're working inside, but in the restaurant industry, when we're still only allowed to have 50% seating, indoor seating, it does present a significant challenge to the employees who are working. And although we want to keep our visitors safe, we also want to keep our employees safe. And so when does it become a hazard with increased temperatures, increased humidity? A face mask impairs breathing, and so that can be an inhibiting factor. So I'm just kind of putting that out there. And again, it is a lot of perception, and I'm hoping that people understand the differences in each industry and what is appropriate and what's not. We also, and I have seen it throughout just about every business that I go in, does have something posted of what they are doing in their own facility to maintain the standards, and that's really encouraging to see. And I think that's all I have. I told you I was a little long-winded, and thank you so much for joining us. I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Samora, since you have a business, I'm going to turn to you next for your questions or anything you would like to comment on, since you also are part of the Chamber and VCB.
Yes, Mr. Goldman, did you say that you had gotten agreement from the county and the old city on the pledge already?
Yes, it might be useful to understand how this came about. It was a program that was originally shared because it existed in Savannah. I have a great friend and colleague there who said, when we were sharing ideas, he says, well, we have this program, and one of our businesses here, the Old Town Trolleys, has a business in Savannah. They brought that idea to the city of St. Augustine, for which they are, with which they are a franchisee. And the city said, this is terrific, we want to do this. The task force that Vice Mayor Koska and I sit on was aware or shared that information, and the county said, well, we'll do that, and in that way it will cut across and intersect a larger area. And so we all said, okay, then this will become a county program, but the city said, we want to be on. The chamber said, we want to be a part of that because it supports businesses. Certainly the Visitors and Convention Bureau wanted to be a part of it because it supports our businesses and our visitors. But not to, just toss out, not to be forgotten in this are also our residents. They also want to feel safe. And the pledge is one of those little tools, a little mnemonic that says, hey, we care about you, and we're following the state.
Very good. And there are several other aspects to this pledge other than just masks, correct? There's sanitation,
yes.
There's social distancing. So this serves as a reminder to the visitors and the businesses and the residents of some of the behaviors that are going to keep people safe during this time. And to Vice Mayor Costa's concerns, I am correct, I do have a business that is affected by this. All aspects of the pledge may not fit every type of business, but it's a business owner's decision, and there's nothing binding them to do anything, correct?
That's great. It's encouraged.
Okay. So I think it's a good thing. I think it would be a nice gesture for us to join the county, join the city, and help put something out there that's going to help the visitors to our area feel at least some comfort that there's an awareness at the city level, at the county level, and at the businesses, there's an awareness that we're making an effort to try to keep people safe. And I have nothing else. Thank you.
Commissioner Zamora, let me ask you a question. If you have an employee that is going to be in front of a customer waiting on them at your restaurant, would you encourage your employees to put on a mask when they are right in front of a customer?
We have, over the past 3 weeks, done several things. We started in one place and made decisions based on our business, the type of business that we are, and it was suitable to us. So we started by requiring masks of everyone. And we ran into some issues, heat-related issues, that caused us to backpedal on the mask. We actually had an employee that we had to call the paramedics out, and she ended up going to the hospital due to heat exhaustion. So we decided, with the temperatures rising over the several weeks, the 3 weeks that we were open, that no longer fit our business. And we then made it not mandatory, but it was up to the employee. We do have some employees that have decided that they will continue to wear masks, and that's great. We also have masks available and this has happened, guests come in and they say, we would feel more comfortable if you were wearing a mask. And the employee then can choose to either not wait on that guest and have someone else do it, or in most cases that I'm aware of, they go ahead and they put the mask on to make that guest feel more comfortable. So the pledge, it may not be suitable for our business. It may be. I just think there are several others. There are retail shops that are air conditioned. There are hotels where people are inside and air conditioned. I think the pledge is suitable for a lot of businesses, and each business owner has the right and prerogative to make the decision as to whether or not it fits completely with their business.
Thank you. Commissioner Rumwell, your questions, comments.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Goldman, for coming to our meeting tonight, our continuation meeting. I appreciate that, and appreciate your explanation. As a business owner as well, I think it's important that safeguards are in place and at the discretion of the employees. We encourage it, and the hand washing and all the stuff like that. And I think, as St. Johns County, not just the city of St. Augustine Beach, but as a group, because we're doing this as a group, that it's important for our local businesses and our local merchants to have the force behind everybody that says, look, this is the recommendation, this isn't foolproof, we're not asking you to sign a waiver saying that there's a problem that could happen, but we're encouraging this, and other cities are doing this now. And so for our businesses who are desperately needing customers and people to come back, if we don't do this, then we're only hurting our people. And I think what you've done, and I like the packet of what we're doing, I'm 100% for it. And I think it's not a one size fits all, but I think that a lot of people will still hear by it even in phase 2 and probably phase 3. I think until there's a vaccine or some sort of treatment, I think that this is a longevity type of a product that you all are putting out to encourage people that, hey, St. Augustine, St. Johns County, St. Augustine Beach is about as good as we can make it. considering the circumstances that we have. So I'm absolutely for it. I appreciate it. I think it's a big deal for our local area businesses that have struggled. And now we hit hurricane season, so God forbid that something catastrophic comes with that. We need to take advantage of every little bit that we can. So I applaud you and your staff and team that has put this together.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner George, please, your comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I'd also like to thank Richard Goldman. Thank you, Richard, for your ongoing commitment to the community. You and everyone at the VCB, you're doing a great job steering us through this this latest economic crisis here. As to this proposal, I think it's a great program. Even if it doesn't maybe fit all businesses, this is a marketing angle to encourage to build confidence by tourists in our community. I think it will have a very strong positive impact on all businesses, whether each one individually participates or not. And I think it's imperative that our city show that united front with the county and with St. Augustine. I'm 100% behind our city approving this pledge, and I think it's a good program. I get it that there are definitely a few kinks in terms of how each employee and each business is going to continue to move forward here, but really the bottom line, this is building confidence. It's part of a marketing campaign. Richard and his team have always shown a really great track record with that, and this does make sense. Also, it encourages everyone here to make that commitment to public safety, not only for marketing, but for our own safety. So I see it as a win-win across the board. Thank you. I don't have any questions because the other questions that were actually answered in advance of my comments. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner George. I believe everyone would pretty much know I'm in full support of this, since I mentioned something that we perhaps could do on our own earlier, but it's hard for me to understand a business would have any problems with the first 4 items. And I have learned there's a difference between sanitizing and disinfecting is very, very important. I do understand the flexibility that is needed on the face mask, but I just think this is a wonderful program, not only for tourists, but our own residents, to show that we care about our residents also. I know we don't have any public comment on this one, I don't believe, tonight on this. So I will make a motion that we allow the use of, that we support the pledge and that we allow the use of our city seal in support of this pledge.
But before we do that, did you have, Mr. Taylor, did you have an opportunity to look into any of the liability concerns?
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Goldman, since you're still on, did I hear you correctly that the county and the other entities that are requesting the pledge are not actually doing any inspections or policing? It's a self-policing by each business to come to those standards?
That is correct.
Yeah, and that's my understanding too. And in that case, and there was a little bit of hemming and hawing about there might be some liability last night. But in that situation, we're not responsible for any policing. Each business independently is responsible for policing itself and holding itself to a standard. That doesn't engender any liability. We're simply doing a health promotion in the area, so that I think we're safe on that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, I will put my motion back on the floor for a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Commissioner George?
Yes.
Mayor England?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Koska?
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman.
And thank you, Mr.
Thank
Goldman,
you
too.
very
Thank
much.
you.
We appreciate it.
All right, moving on, we have finished our agenda items. Max, nothing left over on agenda, correct?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so we can start in on staff comments. I'll go to the police department first.
Yes, ma'am. Chief Hardwick just had two things he wanted me to pass on. In regards to the, I believe it was a parking meeting on Pyrus Street. He said that Commander Ashlock will attend, help mediate whatever you guys need. But he would request that Mr. Tredick and Mr. Law attend as well with their expert advice to help come to a solution there.
Good idea. Okay.
And then as far as beach blast-off, Jack's Beach just canceled their 4th of July and have rescheduled to New Year's Eve. He said if the city, the historic city, does the same thing, he suggested maybe we could get a partnership with them, something that would be fiscally smart for both of our cities, and we could work together for a fireworks show on New Year's Eve between both cities.
Okay, thank you. More to come on that, I'm sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Sorry, okay. Finance department.
We're just monitoring the financial situation of the city. We've started to receive some state revenues in. They're not being hit quite as hard, but those are early estimates at this point. The one sure thing that we know that we've been notified of is the revenue share from the state side. We will be basically losing 1 full month of revenue for that. They're going to take 50% for May and 50% for June. They'll do a true up at the end of the year to see if there's anything left over, and then they'll send that in our direction. But we're still waiting to see the outcome of the April numbers. We should start receiving that revenue in late June.
What's the source of the revenue share? Is it from sales tax?
It is just a state share based upon the, as I understand it, the county, and then they drill down to the different levels of the city and the municipalities, and then they just allocate a portion of revenue that comes directly back to the individuals. So we do receive a half-cent share of sales tax. We receive a fuel tax as well, and these are all functions of just state revenues that they receive, and they look at this. The one thing that I did notice for the economic research did put out the tentative April numbers, and unfortunately, there was an $848 million deficit. That hasn't rolled out to us as far as what our share will be, but as a state, we're down by a substantial amount. And that's for the month of April, which of course was mostly shut down for the COVID. So a lot of people working from home, a lot of businesses shut down. So I, again, will not see the effects of that until we actually receive our share and our check towards the end of June. They're not putting out any projections at this point for FY21. Typically, we will see those in July. They did estimate that there could be some delays with that. So it's just a waiting game at this point.
So Patty, by the time we have to finish our budget for 2021, we may not know the full impact of budget cuts or revenue decreases.
We may not.
Okay.
No. I'm optimistic that things are going to start coming back. I see, the increase in businesses, which is, very positive. Of course, increased traffic, all picks up with the half-cent fuel tax. And, we're going to get some of that revenue back. I just can't estimate. And I think at this point, we're all in the same boat, financially speaking. If it starts to trend up and things get better, to what end when we hit fall, if there's another round of, impacts from the COVID-19 issue, if it rears its head again, that potentially could, put us back another step. So it's just waiting. We're putting together our budget going forward with, everything full speed ahead. And then we will have to wait and see how the revenue is affected. That's basically the way that government's budget anyway. We budget our expenses, and then we backfill with our revenue, and we take a look at, where do we stand.
So you can't just budget on revenue based on, well, here's what we had last year. You're going to be much more conservative, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Coupled with the fact that we have experienced the economic downturn, and we also had a great need that was pointed out to us during our audit this year with our reserves taking a large hit. And then, unfortunately, we are right into hurricane season, and the projections and the outlooks are, a number of named storms for our area, which could impact us as well. And I'm not a gloom and doom person, so I typically tend to be, optimistic that we're going to get through this. Everything's going to, go great. The estimates that I did put together for the commission to look at what we're seeing and where I project the numbers to be, I overestimated by about $2,400. So if that's all we're off, that would be amazing. Unfortunately, I think the biggest month and the largest hits are yet to come for the month of April, and I just won't have a good feel for that until the end of June.
I'm going to turn to the commissioners that are on Zoom to see if you have any questions of Patty, because this is a sensitive topic. Commissioner George?
Thank you, Patty, for your report. No questions at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Nope, just thank you, Patty. It's always tough here at the beach, even probably in great times. So, I'm hoping that that we get that revenue back. Any more updates? And I don't know if Mr. Tredick may answer this question as well with you on the phone or on the same question. Did we receive any money yet for the weir that we didn't have to budget since I know we got the grant? Has that money come in yet?
I'm going to answer no. We haven't received any actual cash. It is my understanding, and what is going into the budget for this coming year will be the fact that it will be 100% funded, 75% from FEMA, 25% from St. Johns River Water Management District. And we're going to budget it's going to be estimated at an 18-month project. Bill and I had a discussion this morning about that. And so we'll budget about 2/3 of the money and expenses this year. And I've been making some phone calls to see about securing some funding to get us through the project, because the cash outlay, of course, will happen first before we'll get any money back. And the water management district will reimburse us, I would project, much quicker than what FEMA may. And at this point, we just need to make sure that we have a good cash flow to complete the project and make sure that, we're waiting just for that reimbursement. So I'm seeking out some type of funding for that.
Okay, that was my question, because I know it can take some time for FEMA especially to get those funds in, and I just wanted to make sure that we still have that projected in our budget, that we have that money there to put out in order to reimburse ourselves. So I just wanted to make sure we were good on that, because I know how important that weir is to get that completed. And so that's the only question I have. Great job. I know you're sharpening your pencil and keeping an eye on things, and I will as well keep looking for any information I get from the state or from the federal government that may help out small municipalities as well. So I will keep doing that as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Samora, any questions?
No, none here, thanks.
Okay, all right. Vice Mayor?
No, I corresponded with Patty and met with her on Friday, and so I thank you for the great job that you're doing, and to have the projections come within $2,400 is amazing, so good job.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Law, Building Department, zoning, planning, all that.
Nothing that wasn't in your binders.
Okay, all right, very good. And Mr. Tredick, Public Works?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
The only thing that's not really covered in, and it is partially covered in the report, is I sent the commissioners an exhibit, a couple of exhibits for some parallel parking along Pope Road that the county did a conceptual plan on. And I just, the main concern I had with it, with the plan, was that there's about 30 spaces just east of Clipper, I'll say east of the Y, and that's a long straight section, probably pretty easy to put parallel parking spaces in there. But they also show the concept of 17 parallel spaces west of the Y, which is the sidewalk, the bike path's a little curvier there. There's some crepe myrtles in the open spaces which would have to come out. It's also across from Lee Drive, which is more residential, is a residential area. So it's a different sort of community than you have just to the east at Bridgentine and Clipper and Schooner. And that was a concern I had. I just wanted to get a little guidance in case this does become a project. And I will point out that it's not in their work plan to be funded for design yet. So that may or may not happen in the future. But if it does become a project, what is the commission's thoughts on whether we want to encourage 17 parallel parking spaces on the north side to the west of the entrance to the Y?
We may need to make this an agenda item if you feel like the county is going forward, or that you want to present this to the commission to get some formal feedback. Unless any commissioner has some thoughts right now, please speak up.
I just have a question, Bill. How far west were they going to go?
Their plan, the conceptual plan, goes to Michael Boulevard.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I think we would probably need to bring that back, but at least we have time to take a look at it. That's good.
Yeah, and again, as I said, they don't have any immediate plans to go forward with this. I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. I mean, it may be something, or at least part of it, we're always looking for parking solutions. We may want to encourage it at some point. So that's an option too.
Well, Mr. Tredick, please just stay on top of that one, and if it seems like it's moving forward, then perhaps we need to put it on the agenda and let the public know what's coming down.
Okay, I will do that if it moves forward.
And again, I know that Public Works is picking up yard trash like crazy. I want to commend you and your staff on all the work that, and perhaps overtime, on picking up all the yard waste. It is a lot.
Well, thank you. We are managing to do it largely without overtime at this time.
Okay.
So that's been good.
And any progress on, I know that workload is heavy, but any progress or thoughts on some of the parquettes and by our entrances on some of the gardens that we've got? Any updates on what has been done, what hasn't been done, what your plans are?
I don't have any updates for you today, but I can look into that and bring an update back at the next meeting.
Okay. I know the one place down there by Publix where the two beach boulevards, A1A, meet, that is pretty dried out. I know it's difficult.
Okay, I will have our guys look at that tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
I
come up
have
with
something
something.
along that same line. Mr. Tredick, is it possible to put trash cans in the parkettes that have benches? I'm just noticing a lot of trash where there seems to be seating, and there's not trash cans that are nearby.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible, and we can look at the parkettes on a case-by-case basis and add cans if necessary.
Thank you. And then last year, we put trash cans at the crosswalks where there are flags for the 4th of July weekend. Would we be able to do that again? It really minimized the amount of trash that was left on the streets. And I would even suggest maybe the week before, since the 4th is on a Saturday, maybe the week before as well as the week following the 4th, just to kind of maintain our beautiful city.
Yes, in fact, I had intended to do that, so we will
Thank
do that
you.
for the
Great
4th of
minds.
July.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions for Mr. Tredick, those on the phone? Hearing none, we shall move on. Mr. Royal, update from you, please.
I don't know if Commissioner George can see this, but we have canned water now. No more plastic bottles.
I can't see it, Max, but that's great news. Thank you.
So when you come back here in your July meeting, I guess, as you indicated today, earlier to me, you'll have your own can of hidden water. I don't know exactly what that brand is supposed to mean, but we make sure it's cold. So yeah, you'll have your own bottle. Your own can, rather. I had a question to you folks here in the commission room as well as on Zoom, about Zoom itself. In our meeting on July 7th on the non-ad valorem assessment, you saw yesterday when we were Zooming with some of the residents at Pirate Street that things got out of control. And I would like to suggest we don't Zoom that special meeting. We encourage people to submit written comments, email comments, whatever, that will be part of the official record if they so choose, or to come to the meeting. If we have an excess crowd, they can be across the hall in the other meeting room. That room is not being used any longer by the public, except for our meetings. And then by that time, the distancing restrictions might be less than they are right now. It was just very difficult, as you saw yesterday, the evening, to control what went on, and it was very disruptive. It's just something to keep in mind, but we're going to have to send out the notices pretty soon for this meeting on the 7th. So I would like to get you a feel for what instruction I should put in for public comment and participation.
Well, Max, based on the information that I was given when we met on electronic meetings and what IT department and Anthony has said to me, is that we really don't have the number of phone lines and the software that is necessary to conduct a meeting with public input via electronic means.
Well, last night we could do it with a rather limited number of people, but if we
Right.
got 25 people on Zoom, I don't know that we could do it.
My understanding is we only have 12 lines.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if the answer is people say, yes, they'd like to be on Zoom. Here's how you can connect to me, and we telephone them up individually the night of the meeting as they come, as your public comment progresses, and we can connect them at that point. I don't know if that's feasible or not, or very cumbersome. I really want to just inform them, come to the meeting if you don't mind being present here in the public, or send comments by email or regular mail.
Madam Mayor, this is Commissioner George. May I weigh in on this?
Yes, please.
I did notice last night, once there was a disruption, after I made mention to the host muting the other participants were in fact muted. So the mechanism for preventing what happened last night is available on this format. It just has to be coordinated appropriately. So, I mean, look, I expect to be able to be there in person. That's, of course, everybody is concerned about, how many people in a room and all of this type of thing. But there are going to be other people who aren't going to want to be there, who maybe still want to comment. I would hate to shut down this vehicle for comment just because of what I interpret to have been a learning curve. One of the first times we had an outburst, I think probably, I'm presuming it was staff that muted everybody, and that worked great once they muted everybody. But so that just means, to me, it would just mean we need to coordinate with staff so that we have one person who's paying attention to what's being said in the meetings, so that when the appropriate time to mute everybody arises, everyone gets muted. And then each speaker individually gets unmuted. So I think that there's no problem with Zoom necessarily. It's just making sure that whoever is in charge of doing that is aware that they are going to be on the hot seat and have to be very attentive.
That makes a lot of sense.
I would have a question for the city attorney, whether our muting people could be considered a form of censorship.
I think we need to be careful with it, but it's not, when people are speaking out of turn and they wouldn't be recognized anyway, them being muted is not a problem. Okay. So the issue for muting would be if someone had public comment time and we were to mute them during their public comment time. If we're muting them at times when they're not supposed to be speaking anyway, it's not an issue. We think strongly that the more ways that people have to participate is better. And in my conversations with the Attorney General's office earlier in the year, they had reminded me that while the video stuff is very nice, even the low-tech phone-in, and if it was nothing but a phone call, it would be appropriate and okay, and that's allowed under the governor's order. So if we can make Zoom work, that's fine, but if we want to have a phone-in line for people to be able to call in and make comments, that also would give somebody some safe way to stay home and still make a public comment and participate in the meeting. They can watch the meeting more or less live on Zoom or on YouTube, and then, so that would be another option that we could have if we cannot figure out the logistics of making the Zoom work. I know that I think that we want to be able to mute and unmute the commissioners, and I believe we can, if we make them hosts, that may solve some of those problems. And then the other commenters, we then would maybe be able to set the room up so that they, or the Zoom call up in such a way that we can mute them and it's not an issue. So the only real issue legally is if we would mute them during their public comment time, and we still may have, as long as we warn them, we'll have an opportunity. If they're vulgar or some other thing, we could mute them after a warning.
Well, it'd be similar if they were actually in the room and the mayor would...
It's exactly the same
They would
process.
say you're out of order. Right.
Correct.
Okay.
If they continue to be out of order, then we could mute them.
All right, we'll include... Please, go ahead,
Madam Mayor.
Commissioner.
Yes, Commissioner
I have a
Rumwell.
I have a quick question. So I know last night you all could not see the people on Zoom. I had to introduce each person. And so the question there is that if there isn't a host, whether it be a commissioner or something, we're going to need somebody to introduce each person on there. And maybe we can, I guess it's if we have 12 lines, then we also got to be careful too, because if we ask them, one thought was, okay, well, when your public comment is up, thank you, have a good night. But I think people will also want to hear the outcome. And so are we going to tie up the 12 where no more than 12 can get on? Or do we have a statement that you say, Madam Mayor, at the beginning that asks them, to continue to watch the meeting, please go to the YouTube channel or something so other people have an opportunity to chime in through Zoom. So we're not limiting, the first 12 that call in, that could be it. And then we're stuck with those 12 and we may have 50 people who may want to Zoom in. So I'm just trying to figure out how can we manage that on both sides. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. There's a lot of research to be done. And I know Anthony has said to me, we have 12 telephone lines. I'm not sure how that works with Zoom. And then YouTube has a comment section that we have currently turned off because it's difficult to manage. And so there's a lot to research and coordinate and get this together. And we would need an administrator, a staff person to do all this. So it is very, very dicey to all the balls up in the air and how we're going to do this. But I'm sure that our IT department can help us and that they can come up with a suggestion for the meeting.
I'm going to meet with Anthony tomorrow morning,
Okay,
the IT manager, and we'll discuss these points.
okay. Sounds good.
Are you ready? Yes. The finance director and I have something to present on Beach Blastoff, just for informational purposes and to getting away from the mics. Patty and I want to show you something. I believe it was emailed to you earlier, and the people who are Zooming should have it. Put it down there.
Commissioners on the phone, do you have a document called Beach Blastoff? Do you have access to it?
See it? I don't know if I'm not seeing it in the right spot. Commissioner Georgia Samora, do you see it?
I looked at my emails and did not receive anything of that nature, no.
And I'm checking my email now, and I do not see it.
Sorry. What the Beach Blastoff document basically says, it's a one-page,
Max, was this sent out to the commissioners via email?
I thought it was earlier. Well,
Okay,
apparently not. What it says at the beginning is the TDC has informed us that the grant applications will be open on Friday, June 5th, and close around July 4th. For FY21, there are a few options we need to discuss regarding Beach Blastoff. The staff has discussed 3 options for the event. It's canceled, or it's scaled back with only fireworks and our local businesses earning money, providing drinks and food, etc. to visitors, or Beach Blastoff continues as normal as possible with some modifications. There are still a number of questions concerning it. Will the TDC give us money for the fireworks? That's a question I have into the TDC director. Will the county allow us to use the pier because they just refurbished the pier? And that's a question I sent to the Assistant County Administrator, Joy Andrews, and she's having her staff look into it. There is a question from Chief Hardwick that came up in a meeting we had last week about Beach Blastoff, that the sheriff no longer may provide low cost or no cost to us law enforcement services. And that would be, if the sheriff started to charge us, and St. Augustine as well, that would be a tremendous hit on the budget. And still, we don't know the restrictions due to the return of the COVID-19 and what that may entail. Our events coordinator, we're encouraging her to look for sponsorships, but again, they may be difficult to obtain because of the pandemic and the closing of businesses. We don't know yet how much the TDC is going to award us. Of course, part of that grant, half of it has to go for advertising, half of it can be operations. The question then arises, if we're advertising, do we want to bring in people to our area when distancing may be still needed? If we cancel at the last minute, there'll be no reimbursement for the funds spent. If we're looking at modifying the event for this year, we want to continue with it. We have talked about using food trucks, local food trucks, instead of getting the vendors from outside, not having a kids zone, limiting the live entertainment like having one band, and not having buses. The buses cost us $8,000?
Roughly 8,200.
$8,200. Of course, we would still need, though, no matter how much we reduce the size of the event, or try to, we still need to do portalets and light towers, sand for the pier, overtime for employees, and payment to the radio station and fees for licensing. So basically, at this point, we're in a holding pattern because we have so many what I call decision points that are circling around us, any one of which, some of the major ones, for example, if the county says, no, you can't fire your fireworks off our pier anymore, well, that's a major, we have no other place in the city for the fireworks. And I think that's a situation where the mayor and I would go down and seek Hunter Conrad and try to persuade them to change their minds. The other thing is if the TDC doesn't provide money for the grant, either for the advertising or for the fireworks itself, then we have a budget hole as well. And overriding all of this information we're provided here is our budget and the limitations of revenues on that budget. And do we put out $30,000 or $40,000 when we've had to reduce the budget because we've had revenue constraints? So those are serious questions. We're not asking you for answers at this point because, as I say, there are things just circling around us and other entities that have to make decisions that will affect us. But we are, particularly Melinda, our events coordinator, are very tuned to what's possible out there, and we certainly would bring to your attention any major decisions that were made that would have an effect on our event. Finance Director?
So basically, this list is just a general concept of what we're looking at right now. With the TDC grant opening up, my discussions with Melinda have been, let's take the approach that this is going to be just another year. We're going to submit for however much money we can obtain from the TDC and try and fund our event like we normally would. If we're awarded that money, we will start moving forward towards making decisions once we have the final decision from the TDC on the fireworks and whether the county will allow us to utilize the pier. A couple of the bigger things are going to hit us early on, signing a contract and making a payment for half of the fireworks up front. That's always going to happen around the first of our fiscal year. So canceling would put us, with an outlay of $12,500. The typical expenses that we would put forth, at least half of the money would be our production company, who runs the music and everything, sets it up for the stage for the sound system and so on. So they would be expecting at least half of that up front in October. And there are very limited refunds with those cash outlays. Worst case, if we spent money, we would be looking at maybe not getting reimbursed for those funds. And so I just wanted to put this together to let you all know kind of what we're looking at in trying to decide which way we go. Now, what Chief had suggested in maybe working in conjunction with the city, that may be an option. But again, that's going to come down to your decision on how we want to move forward with this. But there are a lot of big ticket items on here that we're just waiting on more clarification from other agencies on how that's going to impact us. And again, that's going to have to be put into our budget on, which way we're going with it.
I see the most important issue on this list is the application deadline, that it starts on the 5th, which is Friday, and closes on the 4th, which is before our next meeting. What is the plan to proceed with that? Or are we just going to apply for the grant? And if we do get it, and then we decide to not hold the event, do we just give the money back?
We have to find out specifics. Melinda will be on a phone call with them on Friday to get them the more specific details on how, if we do propose that we go forward as we always do and submit for the TDC grant, similar to what we've done in the past, and if they award it, are there any penalties to us then saying, well, we have COVID who's resurfaced and we just are not going to have the sponsors to move forward? What kind of penalties do we have with the TDC? I think the biggest fear that I would have from that would be penalties for future events. So we submit, we receive, and then all of a sudden we say, well, we can't. And so will that penalize us for future grant money? And, that could really hurt us going forward with putting on an event. So at this point, it is a short-term turnaround. We'll have more information on Friday once we have the actual application, and we'll know what they're expecting, which again is why I wanted to put this forward. I'm kind of in the position of let's go ahead and apply for it and see, how it shakes out. But again, it's going to be dependent upon what constraints they put on that money. If we do say at the last minute, we're not going to, use it.
Understood.
Patty, thank you. I think you need to go forward with your list of questions. Make sure you get all your list and you go after the questions and try to get them answered as well as you can. And what if this, what if that? And then we'll have to see if we come up against something that just stops us dead in our tracks, and then what the alternatives would be. In the meantime, I know that I can work with Max to reach out to the city of Jacksonville as well as St. Augustine. What are your plans? And we can do that, and we can take care of some of those questions and tie things down as quickly as we can. We can call a special meeting if we need to react quickly on things, and make it a short, very quick meeting, and keep the commissioners involved and informed every step of the way to help us make a decision on this, because my intuition tells me, because of our revenue and what we might be doing with the budget, that this is going to be a very difficult year to hold Beach Blast Off. I just feel it's going to be difficult, but I don't know that for sure. So I will, the commissioners on the phone, Commissioner George?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you. This is really an item, to the extent that we need to make any decision on this, that there would absolutely need to be an agenda item, okay? And then I'd add that, to my knowledge, there has not ever been any kind of a penalty, certainly not in the current circumstances, levied by the TDC if an event does not take place. So, I think the current direction absolutely, proceed, but I'm not prepared to make any direction to staff about whether we, move forward with cutting down the size or having the event or not having the event. I thank you for your leadership and offering to step up and talk to other cities, because at this point in time, without data in front of us, without a copy of the itemized numbers, emailed to us in advance, I'm not prepared, nor do I think it would be appropriate to take any formal action, other than I appreciate having the update, and I really do, and thank you for that. But at least as to the concern as to whether
if we applied for the grants and we don't end up not holding the event, my knowledge from, serving on the TDC is that certainly under these circumstances right now, there would not be a penalty. Definitely think, drill into that, ask them more clearly, get it in writing, but just sharing that experiential knowledge to hopefully ease that concern at this stage. Thank you.
Commissioner Samora.
Thank you for the update and being way out in front of this. This is certainly the year, if you're going to be out in front of something, we need to do that this year. I guess way too early to make any decisions. I like what I hear as far as, well, let's go ahead and proceed like this is going to happen, and then it doesn't sound like we have any real deadline type dates until October. And this event is 6 months away. 3 months ago, the world was normal, so God only knows what could happen between now and then. Hopefully it looks normal, more so than going the other way. So let's just keep us updated, and then when the time comes, we will put it on the agenda. Thank you.
Commissioner Rumrell.
Obviously, the grant, as Vice Mayor Koska has mentioned as well, if there's any penalty or anything like that. The firework company, and say that we decide to move forward with it, I think I'd want to have questions before I make that decision or not. If it is canceled, does it go towards next year, et cetera? Obviously, working with the city of St. Augustine, if that's an opportunity as well. And then the same thing, even with the grant, if that money, we got it this year and we didn't use it for it being canceled for unforeseen circumstances, that money maybe rolls over for next year for us as well. So I think those are the questions that I have initially when you all dig deeper, is really what's, I know that the firework company said there's no cancellation policy or 50%. Well, maybe that can be applied to next year. So if we have to use grant money, if we're awarded that, then all that's taken place. So next year we have half to do. So a lot of questions, and I look forward to updates here as it's on the fly. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm hearing that we move forward, we ask our questions, we do our homework, and that if we run into any glitches or anything happens, that the most important thing is to keep the commission informed and bring them in for special meetings as necessary.
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could just add one thing, and I apologize, I walked out for a Zoom meeting, so I just want to step back in real quick. Lieutenant Carswell might have shared some of this. My concern with, I'm watching what Jacksonville Beach, other beaches are doing, is they're pushing off, again, their fireworks shows to New Year's Eve. And if indeed, again, the city has not said anything to me, was simply talking to Chief Fox at the protest, and if they push theirs off, which the decision is supposed to be made this coming Monday night or Monday afternoon with this historic city, then their option would be to possibly do the same thing like Jack's Beach is doing and push it off until New Year's Eve. Manpower-wise, there's no way we can compete with, two events in the same county. I don't think that's that's just my, and again, our physical state as we speak, as we've been discussing here recently, this might just be the writing on the wall to, with everything going on in America, that if the historic city does it, we piggyback on the historic city. Again, that's just my personal opinion. Thank you.
Right, and that's one of those things that as we gather information, we come together and we pass it to the commissioners and we go from there.
Yes, ma'am. If I would, Madam Mayor, if you would, maybe a meeting with the mayor downtown to discuss that.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that I said that Max and I would do.
My apologies. Thank you.
Okay. Max, anything further?
No, Mayor, nothing from me.
Okay. All right. So I think we are done tonight. Thank you. I was hoping to get done in an hour, but if I can get you back home by 7, I do appreciate your time and coming back and finishing our agenda tonight. Some good things we needed to finish. And so with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. I'll second that.
I'll second.
All right. Beverly, we need a roll call vote.
Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Commissioner George,
Yes?
Mayor England,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casca,
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell.
Yes.
We are now adjourned.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Perfect timing.